Today we're going to start Kuf Bays, Amid Bays on the bottom. 102B towards the end. It's 4 lines from the bottom. It starts Boy Minei. Second. Boy Minei Rav Nosson Bareshia mi Rabbi Yochanan. Nosson Bareshia asked of Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan is probably second generation Amir in Eretz Yisrael. He asks him, Mesatas Mishum Mai Mechayev, chiseling out. Why is that chayev? And before we were discussing what the source of certain malachas are, you're not allowed to do that, but what category does it go under? He said, when someone chisels a rock, why is he chayev? So, achvale biyadei mishumak bepatish. He goes like this. He bangs into his hand. Says it's because of banging a hammer, which is one of the malachas. Is the final blow of the hammer. Finishing off a product is one of the malachas. This is that chiseling is because of makabeh patish. It's similar to what Shmuel was saying before when someone makes a hole in a chicken coop. That's makabeh patish, or actually that's Shmuel's actual opinion. We asked before. Mesates is chiseling was makabeh patish according to Shmuel. So the Gemara asks on this. It says Vanantanana Mesates v'hamakabeh patish. If you look up on the top of the page, the second line, it says how much should a person build to be chayev? It says the smallest amount, and then it gives a mesates, the one that chisels, v'hamakabeh patish. And it gives other things is the measurement is the smallest amount. So that's 2 separate cases. The way Rabbi Yochanan is saying it is that the reason why Mesates chiseling is chayev is because he is banging with a hammer. Those are 2 separate cases. The Gemara answers that question, Ema ha-Mesates ha-makabeh patish. You drop the vav, and then you read it, ha-Mesates, which is chiseling, which is banging with a hammer. Okay, that's an adjustment that allows it to work. Tashima, come and listen. We're going to quote another piece of the Mishnah. If you go down one more line, it said hakideach. We said hakideach is someone that drills. We said someone that drills on Shabbos, even the smallest amount is chayiv. So now we're on top of 103. Kuf Gimel, Amud Aleph. It says hakideach kol shu is chayiv. Even the smallest amount of drilling is chayev. Now, Rashi points out that there's 2 types of drilling. There's a type of drilling which is called kaideach. Means I make a hole because afterwards I want to fill the hole with a hook or something. I make a hole to put something in it. The other type of drilling is neikev, where example is I make a hole because I want a window for ventilation. I do not want to fill it. I want the hole. So the kedeach is chayiv. Bishlam Rav. We had earlier machlekes Rav and Shmuel when it came to making a hole in a chicken coop because you need ventilation there. So Rav said that's baina, that's building, and Shmuel said that's makabeh patish. That's the final blow of the hammer, and because you don't need to do anything to that hole afterwards, you've completed the hole. So according to Rav, we understand kaideach is making a hole, which later on you're going to fill. And Rav says that's building. So mechse command the chor binyan. Well, he's making a hole for building. A chor is a hole. Chor chorta. He's holing a hole. He's making a hole binyana for building. El Shmuel lav kamar malachahu. But according to Shmuel, I understand when they were discussing the hole in the chicken coop, that's for ventilation. So that you don't want to fill. So that's considered makabeh patish. It's the final blow of the hammer. The problem is that if you look back in the Mishnah, we said hakideach. Kaideach is making a hole that you do want to fill. That is not the final blow of the hammer. But according to Shmuel, the Mishnah is telling me cases of makeh b'patish. How could it be makeh b'patish if it's not the final blow? You have to fill the hole afterwards. So the Gemara answers, Achamayaskinan, the baze beramtza, the parzala, v'shavka b'gavei. You make a hole with the actual nail. I think there are drills that do this. That sometimes you have to drill a hole in certain things before you put the screw in. Then you get these very fancy drills. It's like they they do the whole thing. I forget what they're called. But anyway, you don't have to drill a hole first. It takes the screw and puts it in. This would probably be some sort of hook that you're trying to put into the wall. So first you would drill a hole and then put it in. But this, you drill the hook in directly. Baze is to drill. And Ramtza is probably some sort of nail. Yeah, Rashi says a long nail. Parzala is barzel. Pei and beis could interchange. And the v'shavki v'gavei, you leave it in there. Gav is inside. The Hainu Gemar Malacha, that's the final Malacha. That's what we're looking for Shmuel. For Shmuel, we're looking for the final blow of a hammer, final bang of a hammer in a drilling that needs to be filled. We figured it out. It's the drilling itself that fills it. It's the, okay. Zaklal, the Mishnah said this is the rule. Any malacha that the malacha can hold, so that is chayiv. When you give a rule, so what you're coming to include something in that rule, otherwise you don't need the rule. You already said some details. That rule is supposed to include other things. What is it coming to include? So the way it would work is if you would have a big block of wood and you want to turn it into a bowl. Say the bowl was a kav. So you would take a square and then you would start to chisel out in the inside and remove material to have a bowl. Now, if you chisel it out enough, then you'll get this block to be the size of a kav. If you don't do all that chiseling out, scraping out inside, then it'll be a thicker wall, but it won't contain as much. It will contain kfiza. Now you could leave it like that. It's coming to tell me that since I could leave it like that as a kfiza, so that's also considered a malacha, even though this could be chiseled out more and turned into a deeper bowl, but a kfiza is also a measurement. That's one pshat here. Another pshat over here the Rishonim bring is dechak kfiza bekava. The first pshat is that kava is really the block that could be made into a kav. And I didn't do it. I just chiseled out a kfiza out of a kav. The second pshat is that I have a block that's a kav. And I use it to measure a kav. Kav is I forget how many eggs it holds, 24, I think. I make a line on it that shows me the kfiza mark on a kav measuring. You know, like on the measuring cups, the full cup holds a certain amount, and then there's a bunch of lines that go along it to tell you how much other things. If it filled to here, it means that. So you dechak kfiza bekava. If you chisel a line onto the kav, that's also miskayemes, and that's just a small mark, but that's chayiv. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says in the Mishnah that hamaka b'kornes al asada, and if you bang onto an anvil, it means the hammer, you're doing work, you bang the hammer onto this block of metal or something to straighten out the hammer, that's chayiv as well. What did you do? It's not the work that you're doing. You banged on the side. Rabbi and Rabbi Yosef, they say that banging on this anvil is practice. He's training. He's chayiv. The Gemara asks, Kasha b'nei Rachva, the Bnei Rachva, have a question. Their name was Eifa and Avimi. They were the Bnei Rachva. They were called, I think, the sharp ones of Pumbedisa. Their mother was famous. Her name was Chaima. She was this beautiful woman that was married to 3 different men that they all died. Abaya married her after 2. He thought that Chazaka is only 3 times, not 2 times. So he said, even though the first 2 husbands died, he was married her after that. Anyway, the Bnei Rachva, this is the children, this is the first marriage of Chaima. So they have a question on the statement of Rabbi and Rabbi Yosef. Elamayata, if practice is considered a malacha, chazam nasa b'Shabbat v'gamar. If someone goes and he watches a craftsman on Shabbos, hachinami de mechayev, that's also learning. Learning a malacha is chayev if you don't actually do the malacha. This is like watching YouTube videos, how to. It's malacha on Shabbos. That's what the Gemara is asking. Over there, they actually had craftsmen probably in the street. So if you go sit outside a craftsman and you watch him, how he does his work, you're going to be chayav, because that's considered practice. Okay, that's a rhetorical question. But saying, how could you say that that's considered a malacha when you did nothing? You're just training, practicing your hand, training. Ella Abaya v'Rava Dami Tarvayo. Rather, Abaya and Rava say, "Shkein mirada de tasei mishkan oisenkein." You have to say it like this. When you make very thin metal, you bang it out. If the hammer is not perfectly straight, then it's gonna break through the metal at certain points. So you need to really do this carefully, that it goes without any tilt or without any exactly onto the metal to make it thin. You don't want to have a hole over there. So in the Mishkan, what they would do is they would make sure the hammer is always flat. This is part of the work. Rashi tells us that they would bang 3 times on the metal plate, on the thin the sheet of metal that they're banging out. They're going to use it to cover maybe something, because they used metals to cover wood, gold or something, and they would bang it out. And they also used the gold to make thread afterwards. So they would bang it very thin, and then they would cut it thin. So they would do 3 times on the plate and then once on the sadan, which is the anvil. Rashi adds in something very interesting. He says the mints in his area do this as well. I don't know if you see that, Rashi. Ubali matbeya, it's right before the Mishnah. Bali matbeya bim kameno reisi isimkin. Rashi saw that in the mint, where they make the coins, that's how they do it as well. I don't know the history of France, where exactly the mints were, but whatever, Rashi apparently was near there, and he watched it. That's what he says. Tanya Nami Hachi was also taught in the Brayse of Shimon ben Gamliel. Rafamaka b'kornas alasadim b'shas melcha chayev shkein meradi tasi mishkan leisenkein. Shimon ben Gamliel says, yeah, you're chayev, because this is the way to do it. It may be there's a rhythm to it also, like 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And they would bang over there to flatten it out, and that was part of the way of doing this. Okay. A small piece of Gemara here. This goes from Mishnah to Mishnah. It starts a little Mishnah, and then notice that there's like another Mishnah coming up very soon. It's a small piece, but it affects much of Hilchos Shabbos, this little piece of the Gemara. Hacherish kolshu, someone does a little plowing, just a little bit. He plows just a little drop. It's chayiv already. Just a little thing. Menachish is if he weeds, pulls things out of the ground to allow his other things to grow. Hamakarsen is if he trims dead branches from a tree. Hamizared is if he cuts branches that are fresh. Now, this is usually pruning. He's cutting them because there's too much on the tree. It weakens the general tree. You have to cut off some fresh branches also to allow the tree to be stronger, to produce more. All of these kol shehu is chayiv. The smallest amount is an improvement to the tree, and therefore that's a malacha. Malakit, someone that collects wood. You would think this is on the ground. Apparently, it's not really on the ground. It's actually attached to the tree. Imlasakin, if it's to improve the tree. So kol shehu, then it's the smallest amount, because that's what we're saying. Any sort of improvement, even the smallest amount, is chayiv. Imlahasik, but if he's doing it because he needs firewood, then the shear for firewood is something else. That's kedei lavashel be'akala. To cook a light egg, which we said a chicken egg cooks very easy. Hamalakit asavim, if he collects grass. Imlasakin, if it's to fix the property, so maybe tall grass, and kol shehu, then even the smallest amount is considered a malacha. Imla behema, but if it needs it for the animal food, so kamalei pi hagadi, then it's the amount of animal food. The Gemara asks, if someone plows the smallest amount, l'may chazi, what can you do with the plowing, where you take a stick and you make a little scratch in the ground? What can you do with that scratch? It says chazi lebizra dekra. You can, in that scratch, you can put a seed of a squash, a pumpkin. You can put that in that scratch. You can now. Rashi over here points out that when it came to carrying seeds, you said you have to carry 2 seeds to be chayiv. When it comes to planting the seeds, even 1 seed is chayiv. He says, yeah, because a person doesn't carry out 2 seeds, doesn't carry out less than 2 seeds. But when he's actually doing the plowing, for plowing, he could prepare the area for each time he makes a hole, makes a hole in the ground to put the seed in. That's a whole thing. And then maybe he has in his pocket more than 1 seed there, but he puts only 1 seed in. The plowing of it, the making the hole, is already significant. Okay. The kavasei gabi mishkan. Shekinrei lekelach echad shel samanim. In the Mishkan, they weren't planting squash. They were planting herbs to turn into dyes, and that's what they would do. This is weeding or pruning or cutting dead branches. Tashema, Tanu Rabbanan. The rabbi started in a brisa. Tailish ulshin. Someone pulls out ulshin, is a type of grass. Rashi says it's called krishbel. Other commentaries say it's endives. There's a commentaries on Mishnayos and Pesachim say ulshin is endives. Amizarid zradim, or he weeds. Reeds. He cuts the reeds. Now, these reeds, I didn't look it up in the Steinsaltz, but apparently there's many uses for this type of reed. It would be comparable to like bamboo. The young bamboo, I understand in China, the tops of it, they eat. It's soft and they can use it. Like saute it and whatever. Then, it could be used when it's a little harder. It could be used for animal food, and then after that, it's used in building or whatever. So, imlachila, if you cut these reeds for eating, then it's kegregris. The shear is the shear for preparing food, or carrying food, which is all the size of a fig. Imla behema, if it's for animal food, kamalei pigdi. Then it's the size of animal food to fill the mouth of a goat. Im lahesik, if you did it for burning, because now it's already wood, depends on which stage of development of the tree or your intention. So kedei lavashel be'akala, that's how much fuel is to cook. Im liafis asakarka, if you're cutting it because you want to improve the ground, You want to plant other things there. So kol shen, then that's the smallest amount. That was our share. The Gemara is the interesting question. It says whenever you cut it for whatever purpose, by the way, it's atukula leliafis a karkaninu. It's always going to improve the ground because you're cutting it down and whatever your intention is what to do with this, that what you cut, but the ground gets improved automatically. Gemara says, Rabbi Tavaya ba'agam shanu. We're talking about a type of ground where it doesn't matter if you improve it because it's not your ground. It's out there in the meadow, and you have no interest in improving that ground. It's not yours. It's wild. Abai says, no, we're talking about a field that's normally plowed. And you didn't have any intention. He says it could be a field. That wasn't your intention, and that's finished. It's not your intention, then there's no problem. Because what we're discussing here is that you're cutting it to eat. So we say, well, you didn't cut enough that's the size of a fig, so you're not chayav. So 1 second, but you improved the ground. So even the smallest amount. That's what we're asking. So we said, well, you didn't have intention to improve the ground. Gemara says, now, we know the Machlekes Reb Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda about kavana. If you do a malacha that happens, but you didn't intend for that to happen. An example is you open the fridge and the light in the fridge goes on. You had zero intention to turn on the light. The light goes on every time you open the fridge. So that's an example of a psik reisha. It always happens, unless you've taken the light bulb out. So the problem is that even Reb Shimon that holds if you do something without kavana is pater, but if it always happens, so then Abai and Rav will say Reb Shimon would be made that is chayav. A real example of without kavana is you drag a chair on the ground to sit somewhere, and it ends up making a groove in the ground. You did a malacha without kavana. You had no intention to improve the soil. And lav dafka, it's going to improve the ground. It's not such a heavy chair, and maybe you can pull it without it. So that's where Reb Shimon says it's mutter. Rabbi Yehuda holds that it's not mutter. He holds that it's aser, and because to him the kavana doesn't. To him the kavana, it's still aser even without kavana. Now, the problem over here is that he's improving the field by cutting these radin, and he doesn't have kavana to improve the field. And we're saying, well, you don't have kavana, so it goes by the shear of what you wanted it for. So what? You didn't have kavana. It's a psik reisha. Every time you cut these reeds, you're improving the field. So the Gemara says, "Leitricha the covered bar the chavri," talking about that you cut it in your friend's field. Rashi here says, "Leichbes leiliyafis." In your friend's field, you don't care about improving it. Well, I guess he's not such a good friend, but Rashi is very interesting because Rashi doesn't make it that I don't want to improve it. Rashi just says I don't care to improve it. I don't care to improve it. Now the Gemara on Daf Ayin Hey, I don't know if you remember, we were talking about taking the blood out of a chilazon, out of the snail, to use it for. We said that you're trying not to kill it because you're squeezing out blood, but you want it to stay alive because when you get the blood out while it's alive, it's more fresher, the ink is better. So over there, we use the same concept. We said, but it's a psik reisha, but it's going to die. But we said that you don't want it to die. And so therefore, this concept is called psik reisha de leinichalei. A psik reisha that you don't want. So let's put it like this. The Meiri puts it like this. There's 3 levels here. Psik reisha, the Gemara's example, why is it called psik reisha? There's a malacha that's happening that you're not intending for. You're dragging a chair on the ground and it's going to plow. You didn't intend for it. The psik reisha part is that it's definitely going to happen. It's inevitable. So the example for that is if someone cuts off the head of the chicken so his children can play with it like a doll. He said, "Oh, I wasn't planning on the chicken dying. What do you know? It died. I just wanted the head for my for the kids. They can maybe put their finger in it and make it, So that's a psik reisha. The chicken dies. Now there's a psik reisha to leinichale. He doesn't want it to die. Or he doesn't want whatever to happen. So in psik reisha to leinichale, I have two options. I have the way Rashi says it over here. I don't care if the end result happens. It doesn't do me any good. It's my friend's field, so it doesn't bother me, or I'm not intending to improve it. And then there's the way Rashi said it on the Fayin Hey, where I don't want it to happen at all. I just want to point out Taisvis over here, Leitzricha David the Chavre. Taisvis says, Pirish Ba'arach. The B'psikreshet Leinichale, skip a few lines, says Mutalachat Chila. Afilu Isidur Rabbanan Laka. If you don't want that, it's mutalachat chila. This has an influence on halacha. Someone wanted to say, it's a very big chiddush. Someone wanted to say that what's a psik reisha leinichale? Let's say you open up the door, the refrigerator, the light's going to turn on. So it helps you when the light turns on. I mean, you can see. It's not a psik reisha leinichale, but someone wanted to say, no, you don't want it to turn on because you're going to be mechal Shabbos if it turns on. So it's psik reisha leinichale. So almost every psik reisha turns into a psik reisha leinichale because you don't want it to happen because of chil Shabbos. Usually that's not the way of understanding leinichale. Leinichale means begashmius, I don't want it. Not because of Hilchas Shabbos, I don't want it. But anyway, that's what some people said. Okay. There's a big discussion over here, but this Taisvis is the basis of this. Taisvis argues on the Aruch, and Taisvis says that it's asim midrabanan. See, what are we discussing here? We're discussing over here if he's chayiv chatas for doing something small. We said it's a psik reisha. We said psik reisha d'lei nichalei. So Taisvis says it's still aser. It's just not chayiv chatas. The Aruch says no, it's matal chatchila. That's the machlekes. Okay, we're up to Mishnah. This is a lot of Hilchas Stam, is besides for what we learn in Menachos, but is the way of writing the letters is learned from this sugya right here. So Hakesef Shtei Yosyos, if someone writes 2 letters on Shabbos, Bein B'yamin Bein B'Smela, whether he uses his right hand or his left hand, we'll see how the Gemara is going to explain this because writing with the left hand is a little bit abnormal. Bein Mishem Echad Bein Mishtei Shemes. Shem Echad means whether he writes 2 letters that are the same. He has to write 2 letters. Whether it's Shem Echad, whether it's 2 aleph, let's say. Bein Mishtei Shemes, whether he writes an aleph and a beis, right? Bein Mishtei Samanias, or whether he uses 2 colors of ink. He uses those pens. Remember those pens that you could push down, get a different color every time you push down a different thing. And you'd get them as birthday presents or whatever. They did not last long. I'm not sure what was wrong with them. But so if you switch the color, it's still chayiv. It doesn't change. And b'choloshin, or whether it's in any language, whether it's Hebrew or Greek or English or whatever, those 2 letters will be chayiv. Amar Rabbi Yosi lechiv shtei esusel mishum reishim. Rabbi Yosi says the 2 letters is not really letters. You don't need to write letters. What's the issue? Making any sort of mark on a board is a problem, or on a paper. Why? They would have to match up the boards in the Mishkan to know which one went next to which. It was like the sukkah boards. If you have sukkah boards, so you mark them where they belong. because you made holes one year in the boards to put the screws through. So if you say A, A and A and B, B and, you put them together like that. So then you're able to match them the next time. Now in the Mishkan, all the boards were exactly the same. But nevertheless, the ones that were on the western side are more holy. And so we want them to be in the same place next time they're put together. But the idea is not the letters that are there. Any mark could make a sign of which one goes next to which. Rav Yehuda, Rabbi Yehuda says, Matzina Shem Katan Mishem Gadol. Rabbi Yehuda says it's possible to write something small out of something big. For example, Shem Mishimen. You intended to write Shimon. You stopped short and you wrote Shem. Now, Shem means a name. So maybe it means Sam.
If it's just for a mark, so why do you need 2 letters?
Yeah, I need 2 letters because I need to show this board goes next to that board. So I can do a mark. I can do even on the location on the board. I can put a mark up here and a mark up there. Then the next board I do over here and over here. On the next side of the board.
So it's 2 separate ones for each one.
One would be for each one, and all it tells me is that I put them, that they combine. Yeah, I hear Moshe making a chiddush that if you write one letter on one paper and another letter on another paper, that you'd be chayiv according to this. That's what's coming out. That's interesting. Okay. Shem Shimon. If you write Shem from Shimon, the Gemara is going to ask an interesting question. That the way I write Shem is slightly different than I write Shimon, even the Shem out of Shimon, because Shem has a shlas mem, a final mem. The Gemara is going to ask that question. A very interesting discussion. The end letters, when it's at the end of a word, it's different. It's a problem there. Professor, you want to say something? Let me unmute 1 second. You have to adjust. No, do it again. Mute it again. Yeah.
Okay, Rabbi Stein's pens are modern. Yeah, we got the old. Yeah, right.
Oh, I see. Yeah, very nice.
They're not like the old days, which were metal, really, with not a plastic transparent like that. But it's the same idea. Wonderful. Thank you, Remy.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So the marks were used to line up the boards, but if I remember correctly, Aleph Beis was also used to mark each individual beam. So there were marks and Aleph Beis on each beam?
Rabbi Yosi is saying that it wasn't necessary to put Aleph Beis.
No, that's just to know which beam goes where, if it's on the right, on the left, in the back. But these marks were actually to line them up correctly so the poles would go through?
It doesn't say so the poles will go through.
Whatever.
To know the order of, and the explanation is usually given to know which part of the Mishkan, because it gets holier as you go back to the Kodesh HaKadoshim.
That's what it's saying. That's why the marks were there.
That's why the marks are there, to make sure that this one wasn't put at the other end. As if it was used once on this side, that's what side it stays. And there was a mark there for that. So Rabbi Yosi is saying is that the fact that they did letters in the Mishkan, that's not significant. In the Mishkan, there could have been marks as well. He's not saying exactly if it was. Shekach Kaisven, or maybe he is saying that's what it was. That's what they did. They used marks in the Mishkan.
It makes sense.
So therefore, that's the malacha.
Okay, I didn't know about the marks. I knew that from when I remember that each beam at least had, like, let's say the first one was Aleph, the second one was Aleph, and then Beis to match up the next one. But it also makes sense, I guess, to have, exact lines to line it up. So it's, a quarter of an inch, up or down, to make sure everything lines up.
It wouldn't that be automatic if it was, the order was correct?
It's no, even when you're doing anything in metal or wood or something, an eighth of an inch off or something, like when you have a beam, a pole going through the whole thing, you have to make sure each one is exactly in place.
So you're
Otherwise,
saying the location of the line also. Okay.
yeah.
Very nice. So the Gemara now says, this is now we're out after Rabbi Yossi's opinion. The Tanna Kama says 2 letters. Rabbi Yossi says 2 marks. Rabbi Yehuda says, he goes on from that. He says not just the 2 marks, but even if he intended to write a whole word and he stopped in middle, that's also chayav. For example, Shem Shimon, Umi Shmuel, or Shem from Shmuel, Noach mi Nachar. He intended to write Nachar. He ends up writing Noach. Don mi Daniel. Wanted to write Daniel, he just writes Don. God mi Gadiel. Yeah. It's good we used the Hebrew names, or else we would have had like, I don't know, Dora from Theodora or something. I don't know exactly. But, okay. Bishleima, Ayamin, the Gemara says, it's good. Ayamin, l'chayev mishum, the derech ksiva bekach. We understand why you chayev if you write with the right hand, because that's the way of writing. Ella asmal amai, but why you chayev if you write with the left hand? Hayin derech ksiva bekach. That's not a normal way of writing. You try writing on chalamayid with your left hand. It's very clear that this is not the normal way of writing. So Rabbi Yirmiyah be'ita yad shana. We were talking about a lefty. It says v'tevi smoldi dekim in the kuli alma. So then you're in trouble, because then it works exactly the other way. So his left is the right. So why are you saying that if he writes with his right is now the left? He shouldn't be chayiv if he uses his right, because he's a lefty. He can't write with his right. The Gemara says, "Elam Rabbi b'shelet b'shtei." We're talking about ambidextrous. He could write with either hand. This could be the source. The Alter Rebbe, when it comes to tefillin, I don't know. Actually, it doesn't really tell me tefillin which hand is considered the right hand. The ikar is the writing. I don't know how the Alter Rebbe learns it exactly, but because there's people that do all types of things. They say, I pitch with my this, but I write with my that. Rabbi Yaakov Braid Bas Yaakov. This is a new one for me. Rabbi Yaakov, the son of the daughter of Yaakov. Omar, he says, Hamani Rabbi Yossi. We're talking about Rabbi Yossi. Unbelievable. If I have to write letters, then you're right. That's a big problem. I can't write with letters with my left hand. It's very strange. But if I just have to make a line, I can make a line with my left hand, and that's perfectly fine. So if the whole chiyuv of writing on Shabbos is not letters, but making a mark, so making marks, my left hand is normal. The Gemara says, you can't do that. That statement was said before the Gemara says, Rabbi Yossi Yomer. That means that it's not Rabbi Yossi. The Gemara says, Kula Rabbi Yossi. The whole Mishnah is Rabbi Yossi. So why does it say I'm Rabbi Yossi afterwards? On the side of my Gemara, I don't know if you have this. On the side of my Gemara, I have a brackets. The brackets is usually Rabbi Shaya pick. He says over here, he quotes Rashi in Chulin that says, "Ha'im medavar b'shem mamrei." The Mishnah, the Tana, the Mishnah wants to say who said this. It forgot to say it, so it goes back to say that what we said was really Rabbi Yossi. Amar Rabbi Yossi is going back and saying that the whole Mishnah is Rabbi Yossi. That Omer David B'Shem Mamrei could be even afterwards. You have to go back and say, by the way, what I told you before is really Rabbi Yossi. Very interesting. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Matzina, Rabbi Yehuda says that we find that you can write one letter, and that's 2 letters from a big name, and it's already chayiv. The Gemara says the examples that Rabbi Yehuda gave were all 2 different letter words. Shem, Shin, and Mem. Noach, Nun, and Ches. Don, Daled, Nun. Rabbi Yehuda Shtei Yosef, Shem, Shem, Sudem, Mechayev. Rabbi Yehuda says Yechayev if you write two letters that are two different letters. But two letters that are the same letter, it looks like you're not Chayev. But we have a question because there's a brisa that says different, that Rabbi Yehuda holds differently. Even if you write the same letter twice, let's say someone's name is, I'm going to say, let's say his name is Sus, Tut, Rar, Gag, Chach, two Cheses or something. Over there, Rabbi Yehuda says also Yechayev. So why over here did we say Shin Mem? Now, what happens now is we have a long brisa. There's only one point of the brisa that we're looking for at this point. And we're going to go down half the page in the next page just to bring out this question that Rabbi Yehuda says that even if you write two of the same letters, you're chayav. So it's a long brisa, and it's a little bit repetitive because we had some of these opinions here. But if you take note, the Gemara is going to go back and explain some of the things in this brisa as well that are said just by the side. Okay, so what time we start in the brisa? It says vasa achas. We're discussing if someone does one of the mitzvahs of Hashem, he violates one of the mitzvahs of Hashem, he has to bring a korban chatas. This is not by Hilchos Shabbos, this is by the korban chatas, but Shabbos is one of the things that you bring a chatas for. Maybe you have to write the whole name to be chayav on Shabbos chatas. You have to weave a whole garment. You have to make a whole basket or a sifter or some a wicker basket. Talmud Omer mei achas. Doesn't have to be the full thing. From one, which means part of it. Mei achas, if it's only part of it, maybe only if you write one letter. You only wove one thread. You only made one stitch in a wicker basket. Talmud Laimar, enough is really a sifter or something. Talmud Laimar achas. It says it has to be one. And it says me'achas, from one, which means partial. But it also says in the word me'achas, there's also the word achas, which means one. So, okay, so how do you fulfill both of these statements? It has to be at least a small name out of a big name. For example, Shem Shimon u'mishmol. If you write Shin Mem out of the word,
isn't the achas? Because it's not from the me'achas. It's achas me'achas. So it's the first achas without the mem.
Oh, you think so? Let me see the pasuk.
Well, it's achas me'achas. I'm not sure.
I think the pasuk says, "Nefesh ki sechta b'shgaga mikol mitzvos asher le'siyasena va'asam meyachas mehena." Is there another pasuk? It could be. If there's another pasuk, I only looked at that pasuk. So, if that's the case, so you have to have something full. So we say, yeah, it's a full name out of it's the shame out of Shmuel or Shimon or Shmuel. Famous sefer, Chassidish sefer, Shem Shmuel, son of the Avnei Nezer, I think. Nayach mi Nachar. Nayach out of the name Nachar. Dan mi Daniel, Gad mi Gadiel.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
Didn't we learn all this, a couple months ago?
Yeah. This was mentioned. We had Achas Mehena. We had this before.
Oh, it's just mentioned.
Yeah, this is the source. There was quoted. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer afilu leikasav el shtei yaisius v'hein shem echad. Here's really what we were looking for. Rabbi Yehuda says even if you write two letters that are the same, kigoyin sas, tas, ror, gag, chach, right? All of those are chayav as well. This is the question we're looking for. We could stop here, but the Gemara quotes the full brisa. Rabbi Yaisi says, "V'chim chayav." He's chayav because of writing. He's chayav because of making a mark. Shekin reishman al karshia mishkan leida ezi ben zugay, because they would make a mark on the mishkan, people on the beams of the mishkan, to know which ones paired up with which. If you make one scratch on two boards, That's how they would do it probably. They put the boards together and make a scratch. Or if you make 2 scratches on one board, so you're chayiv. That's exactly what they would do. Reb Shimon Aimer va'asa achas. Shimon says, he quotes the pasuk. If he does from one, or he does one, he doesn't quote the mem. Yachal at shichtav eskal Hashem. Is this actually? Yeah, the pasuk is still v'asa me'achas, I think. Maybe you have to write the whole name. Achiyar kol abeg, you have to weave the whole garment. It's called achiyasas kol anafa, you have to make the whole type of basket. Talmud lemer meyachas. No, even part of it is already chayiv. Meyachas, if it's only part of it, yachal filei kosav eloi sachas filei argel lechatechad filei asel b'yisachad benafa. Maybe if you only do one stitch, if you do one letter, if you do one of the weavings of the basket, Talmud lemer achas. No, that's not enough. The Gemara is going to ask later that Reb Shimon is exactly what the Tanakama said. I don't need Amar Reb Shimon to tell me the same thing. He concludes, you have to do something that's going to last. We'll see what that's referring to in the Gemara. Rabbi Yosi says, Vasa achas.
It seems like there are 2 psukim. One says machas, one says achas.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, here it's exactly
Okay.
a few times. It says va'asa in Vayikra Dalet Chav Beis va'asa achas.
Oh.
Asher nasa yechta.
Okay. We're quoting here by Yikra Dalet Beis. And so you're talking about by the Nasi, it says Vasa Achas.
Right.
Okay, good.
So in other words, so it depends which achas you're using, either
Okay.
achas or me'achas. But he says, but there's a place where it says achas by itself, and that's why it's on.
Very good. Very good. Yeshakayach. The old Torah, in the commentary Torah on the Gemara, which in the old Gemaras, if that's what you're using, it's put in the margin, and it only says the perek. It doesn't tell you the pasuk. So okay. So Reb Shimon says it has to be a malacha miskayemes. Rabbi Yosi Aimer, we had Rabbi Yosi already. Vasa achas vasa heina. Pamim shechayev achas al kulam. Pamim shechayev al kol achas v'achas. He throws us into some other category, some other discussion which we had in the 7th perek, that sometimes you chayev one chatas for a bunch of malachas, and sometimes you chayev many chatos for each one. So Katani Mia, it was taught. This is what we re-quote the issue, why we quoted this brisa. Nevertheless, it was taught. Rabbi Yehuda says that even if it's the same 2 letters, you chayev. Why did the Mishnah give us an example that's not as big of a chiddush as there could have been? Gemara says, like kash, it's not a problem. Hadidei, Rabbi. You're talking about Rabbi Yehuda? Rabbi Yehuda has his own opinion, and he has the opinion of his teacher. One is his own, and one is he's quoting from his teacher. The Tanya was taught in a brisa. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer. Rabbi Yehuda says, Mishum Rabbi Gamliel. Okay, we're already getting the idea already. In the name of Rabbi Gamliel, I feel like Kasvel Beis Yosef Shem Shemechad Chayv Kain Sus Tas Ror Gag Chach. Aha. Rabbi Gamliel holds that even if the letters are the same letters, but if there's 2 letters, you're chayev. Rabbi Yehuda holds 2 different letters would be chayev, not if it's the same letter. Here you see Rabbi Yehuda is a student of Rabbi Gamliel. The interesting thing is it says Mishum Rabbi Gamliel. Mishum usually means that he didn't hear it directly. But nevertheless, this is called Hadar Rabbi. It's his teacher. I don't know if that has to be translated like that. It could mean that it's from a previous. We have other Gemaras that says his teacher was, we know, of course, his teacher was Rabbi Akiva, but we have other Gemaras that say his teacher was his father. Okay, now the Gemara goes back to something else that we said in this brisa that we quoted just to ask the question. That Reb Shimon goes through this thing. It says achas. It also says heina. It says achas, it also says me'achas. How do you fulfill both? And it has to be miskayemes. Well, that was discussed also by the Tanakama. Reb Shimon Haina Tanakama. Reb Shimon is the same opinion as the Tanakama. You said the first opinion, you quote Rabbi Yehuda, then you say Reb Shimon's opinion, but they're really the same. So v'chitema aleph aleph the zarcha ika beinayu. We have a word that has I guess it's a prefix. There's an aleph, and then there's an aleph of the word, and that would be a machlekes between Reb Shimon and the Tanakama. Let's go like this. Tanakama savar aleph aleph the zarcha loy mechayev. That aleph aleph doesn't have meaning if you just write an aleph aleph. Reb Shimon savar, Reb Shimon holds even the isi begalturi ba'alma, in amulets, it would say aleph aleph, like some Kabbalistic something, amulets. So therefore, that is something significant, even though it doesn't really mean anything. I looked this up in the Steinsaltz. He has, galture is the Greek or whatever, like glossary, it's like the word glossary, and it's really an entry into it's where they tell you what prefixes mean also. He has different explanations for this. But whatever the case is, according to Reb Shimon, that's significant, and according to the Tanakama, that's not a real word. So Reb Shimon holds chayev. The problem with saying this is, l'meimer de Reb Shimon l'chumra. This means to say that Reb Shimon is more machmer. You're chayev even for words that don't have meaning. We know that Reb Shimon isn't more machmer. Reb Shimon is more mekel. But Tanya, we have a brisa. It says hakideach kol shu chayev. This we started the Gemara today with kideach. So in drills, and he wants to fill it in, but even if it's the smallest amount, he's chayev. Hamegarer kol shu, someone that scrapes boards. He like with a plane, he shaves it down. Hama'abit kol shu, someone that tans leather, even a small amount. Hatzar bekeli tzura kol shu, and someone that makes an image on a utensil, even a small amount, is chayev. Reb Shimon Aimer achi kadechas kulei, achi yigras kulei, achi avedis kulei, achi yatzer kulei. Shimon is the opposite. Shimon says you have to complete the whole thing to be chayev. Whether it's making a hole or whether it's scraping something down, sanding it down, or tanning it, or making carvings on a utensil, you have to finish the whole thing. Shimon can't say aleph aleph is chayev. We have a brisa that clearly says the opposite. Ella, Reb Shimon ha'asalashminan. Reb Shimon is telling me something else. You have to write the whole thing. That's what Reb Shimon wants to say. He's arguing. You can't write a shame mishimen and be chayev. You have to write the whole Shimon. The Gemara says, how can you say that? Reb Shimon says clearly not like that. It says the pasuk, the word meyachas, tells me that I don't have to complete the whole word. So the Gemara says tartzvei ma'achi. You could explain it like this: maybe you have to write the whole sentence. Talmud Laimar meyachas, you don't have to write the whole sentence. You think you have to finish the whole book. If you finish the whole word, that's already chayev. Rabbi Yosi Yomer, now we go back to explain. We mentioned Rabbi Yosi. Vasa achas, vasa hena. Pam shechayev achas al kum, pam shechayev al kol achas v'achas. Sometimes you chayev one chatas for a bunch of malachas. Sometimes you chayev a chatas for each. It means a bunch of chatas. Amar Rabbi Yosi bar Chanina, my time with the Rabbi Yosi. Rabbi Yosi bar Chanina, so early Amira, he explains what's Rabbi Yosi saying over here. We learned this already. It says, achas me achas, hena me hena. It says the word achas, it says me achas, it says the word hena, it says me hena. Achas she hena vehena she achas. We'll go back to explain that. Achas, which is one, which is these, or those, and those, which is one. What is achas? That's Shimon, that's the full word, if you write the whole Shimon. Me achas, if it's from one, then it's shemi Shimon. It's just part of the name Shimon, but it's already significant. Now, Hena, which means those or these, is Avis. Me Hena, from these, is the Toldus. Okay. Now, what is achashi heina, which we mentioned before? One, which is these, and one, and these, which is one. So now it explains. Achashi heina, one, which is these, which means that it's going to be one chatas. I'm sorry, it's going to be one prohibition. It's going to be many chatais. Many chatais. That's Zadin Shabbos v'shigas malachas. That's when he knows that it's Shabbos, but he forgot that those malachas are asur. So, like we learned in the 7th perek, that you have to bring a chatas per av malacha, because that's what you forgot. You forgot that. Oh, I forgot I wasn't allowed to plow. I forgot I wasn't allowed to sow. I forgot I wasn't allowed to thresh and all of that. Heina shiachas. What are these? Which is one. That shigas Shabbos v'zadin malachas. That is already, and I'm only chayav one karban, because even though I knew that I can't do these malachas on Shabbos, but I didn't realize that today was Shabbos. So like we learned in the 7th perek, that then you only have to bring one karban for all the malachas that you did that Shabbos. Okay, let's leave it over here.